Joining me on the program now, Tash McGill. Are you ready for Christmas, Tash?
No, no.
Well, I mean, that was a nice Christmas song. At least I wasn't playing Snoopy or worse or something to do with snow or, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Look, if I'm to be honest, I'm still trying to resolve the family drama from last Christmas. So no, I'm not
Okay.
ready.
Sorry
Not ready for
for
Christmas.
re-triggering last Christmas. I think that's a George Michael song, but we won't go there either. What we are talking about today is how more isn't always more. Now, this reminded me of, look, I'm going back to primary school. We had these maths quizzes that we had to do, and I was terrible at maths as a kid, Johnny has 6 apples. He eats 3. Does he have more apples or less apples? The answer is always he has less apples if we eat less. More is more. More can't be less. I mean, you're confusing me. You're confusing a childhood me. Tell us what you
sitting
mean.
here doing nothing. You're confusing yourself. It's amazing to watch.
Yeah, self-confusion. There we go. Self-confessed self-confusion. When you
Yeah.
say more isn't always more, what do you actually mean? This will be less confusing than me trying to explain it.
So something that we have talked about in the past is sustainable happiness.
Oh, yes.
This idea that actually contentment is something that is good to pursue and good to look for, not because it's settling for something less than, but that to have contentment with contentment with what we have, with what we do, with where we are, because the risk is that more is not always more. And one of the things that I think is useful that I saw the other day that really clarified this for me is a saying which said, my desire was the source of my pain and my suffering.
Wow.
And I think that is actually incredibly insightful and very accurate in a world that pursues more, right? We're in the middle of an election cycle. There's lots of talk about who's going to get more tax cuts, more benefits, more this, more that. It's all more. And it's particularly relevant right now because we're in a time of less.
Yes.
Because we are faced with some of those economic restrictions. The challenge with having an attitude of wanting more and always pursuing more is that you tend to think that all growth is good. So whether you are in a business or if you're perhaps studying, this will be relevant for you, Andrew, that more is more.
Yeah.
That more study will lead to more outcomes, will lead to better knowledge, will lead to all of those things.
Yep.
But sometimes more is not actually more. Sometimes more means less of everything else. Another great way, and I know I'm throwing lots of word pictures at you, but it's in hopes of trying to explain all of the ways in which more is not more. And another example is, and again, thinking about desire and how the more fuel we throw onto the fire of our desires, the things that we want, the more consuming the fire becomes, right?
Yeah.
So fire by way of growth is never good because fire consumes everything it touches until there's nothing left. So if you want to say, okay, well, more is not always more, throwing more fuel on the fire means less. Fire consumes everything it touches.
Unless it's a signal fire, but I don't want to get lost in the metaphors here. Is this a little bit of a first world problem or even more so a middle class third world problem? Because, I mean, as you say, this is a season of less. And for some people, just a little bit more would make all the difference between whether or not they are thriving or whether they are really, really struggling. Do we say, sometimes less is more when we've actually got an abundance?
I think we do. We have a tendency to be like, oh, less is more, but we tend to think about that in not in relevance to how much we have, but actually in complexity.
Yes.
Right. So we tend to say less is more when we want things to be simpler. When we somehow think that having less of the whatever is going to make life easier to manage, and that again is about comfort. That's about saying, oh, okay. And oftentimes when we think about more, we are thinking about comfort. So it brings me all the way back around to the circle of sustainable happiness, which is that if you think about an endless pursuit of more, whether it is a philosophical pursuit of more, whether it is study, whether it's ambition, whether it is, whatever it may be that you are looking for, the last word picture, I guess, that I'll leave you with is that I would rather walk along an undulating ridgeline
Yeah.
of a mountain range
Hmm.
than achieve a single peak and have to walk straight back down.
Wow.
And so
Or
more
get to the top of the mountain and find, no, it's still going straight up because you've just got to keep climbing up. I mean, my calves are aching just thinking about that scenario, actually. Yeah.
Something else that I saw the other day is that this is a bit grim, but every dead body that lies on Everest was an overachieving, ambitious human once.
Wow.
You see where I'm going with this?
Exactly. I've got a fun monkey metaphor. Now, some people may see this as anti-capitalist or even a little bit too socialist, but I heard this morning, in fact. If a monkey living in its natural environment decided that it was going to try and hoard as many bananas as possible, and it was going to get all the bananas, and it was just going to take the bananas off all the other monkeys and just hold on to all the bananas, zoologists would study that monkey to try and figure out what on earth was wrong with it, because that is not normal behavior in the animal kingdom. He's not going to be able to eat all those bananas, and now all the other monkeys hate him, right? I mean, and that is a definite situation where more bananas isn't necessarily a better scenario for the monkey or the other monkeys, right?
Yeah. The other, yeah, I
Too
mean,
much
it's just,
potassium in your diet as well with that many bananas. I mean, that's a serious thing. Anyway, I interrupted.
We tend to think of more being in relationship to growth.
Yes.
But one of the things that is really fascinating is a piece of research that they did many years ago, where they inoculated a number of trees, deciduous trees.
Wow.
And what they found is that they inoculated them so that they would not shed their leaves, right? So they wouldn't go through the winter season.
Yeah.
They would enjoy the winter season, but they wouldn't go through the winter season. What they found is that those trees all died sooner. So a tree has a lifespan. I know this is a lot about death, but
yeah, exactly.
A tree has a lifespan.
Yeah.
And whether that lifespan is 500 years or 1,000 years, a tree has a natural lifespan that when it is spent, it dies, right? So they don't live in perpetuity.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the time, the speed with which they grow impacts, what that lifespan is. So the researchers were trying to do something really effective, right? More is more.
Yep.
If more is more, the tree will grow faster. It will be, but instead, what happened is that the tree died sooner, and there was less opportunity for what was going on. Without a winter season, without a season of less, we actually do not thrive in the way that we expect if we are in constant growth mode, which is to say, 6 days of work and a day of rest. We need a season of less. We need a season of whether you want to call that simplicity, whether you want to call that holding back, whether you want to call that pausing for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
But as human beings, as living beings, whether we are monkeys or trees, whichever one you want to roll with there,
or dead climbers on Everest. Don't forget that one. Yeah.
Yeah. But the lesson is this: more is not always more, because growth cannot be a constant state of being. We have to have growth, and then we have to have less. We have to have rest. We have to have that time for pause. So, I think that's why things like the OE year, for those who are able to afford to do it, is important. It's the reason why we have a retirement. It's the reason why we have a weekend, because we cannot be constantly in the pursuit of more without actually resetting, and actually that means sometimes less.
Yeah, no, hey, very good stuff indeed. Hey, I do hope that you managed to get some sabbatical rest in amongst the very busy things that you're involved with. Thank you for taking the time to share your wisdom with us. You're not planning on climbing Everest anytime soon? No?
Not anytime soon. I may go for a walk later this afternoon. We'll see how it goes.
Climb every mountain, etc. Hey, Tash, thank you so much for joining us today.